Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Backtrekking, the podcast where we look back at the real-world inspirations behind classic episodes of Star Trek. I'm one of your hosts, Caliban, and I just remembered I need to get my Mugotten breeding stones polished. I'm joined in this episode by my co-host.
I'm Gooey Fame, and don't make me kill this kid.
And we have returned to explore the stories behind your favorite Trek shows. And today we're talking about a Hugo Award-winning sci-fi short story and the Star Trek episode that it inspired. It's the Ursula K. LeGuin story, The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas, and the Strange New Worlds episode, Lift Us Where Suffering Cannot Reach.
Yes, I forgot that we do an intro joke, and I was like, what happens? They kill a kid.
Yeah. Would it really matter if we remembered every week? Probably turned out about the same. But that's where we are. Can't wait to talk about this because, every once in a while, I don't know why I feel like we have to continually confirm that this is a great idea for a show, but this really is. There's no argument here. In fact, this show kind of tells itself. We're just here to sort of cheer it along on the sidelines because this is,
yes,
everyone agrees exactly what the inspiration for this story in this episode is.
And this feels like this is kind of one of the first ones. Like, we've had other episodes that we've done like that's current Trek, but this was like the first one I was kind of like watching and seeing the reaction to it live of like people are naming the short story, and like, this is like this, where I feel like we haven't really gotten that often with the new Trek stuff of like people immediately going there. So it was kind of fun, like watching this season being like actually feeling like, oh, there's some episodes we can do here.
Yeah. And you say what you said, you just said it about new Star Trek, but I have an anecdote about that might surprise you. Concerning what has inspired some recent episodes of the various Star Trek series, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But first we have to talk about Star Trek generally. And before we get started, we unfortunately have to do a pair of RIPs here. Just recently, this Monday, we heard the unfortunate news that actor David Warner had passed away at the age of 80. In London. He was a British actor who has, he's thought of, I think, mostly as a character actor, but he's just been in a ton of things like The Omen and Time Bandits, Time After Time, the villain in Tron, Titanic. I forgot that he was in Titanic. Somebody brought that up. I was like, oh yeah, he's in Titanic. And of course, several very important roles in Star Trek. He played St. John Talbot in Star Trek V. Of course, he played Chancellor Gorkin in Star Trek VI. And he played Gul Madred in the Next Gen two-parter Chain of Command.
Yeah, those are all great roles. Like, particularly, like he kind of, his portrayal in the Chain of Command. I guess you have like a Mark Alimo, kind of is like kind of the prototypical Cardassian. When they introduce them, and he goes on to portray like the most iconic one, but like that role that's great. He kind of like defined to me like what a Cardassian is like for the first time in that episode, and his portrayal is great. Both the other roles he's great in, and like he was really, I love like character actors like that, and he really is always like ingrained in my mind because I loved the Ninja Turtles movies as a kid. And he works for the the company that's making the ooze or whatever.
TGRI.
The TGR. Yeah, they see him on they see him, they go, it's the TGRI guy.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I don't know. He's awesome.
Yeah, he's just that guy who, from what I understand in real life, was a really nice guy, and obviously Paramount liked working with him because they kept bringing him back. And he was just like somebody who had, did great interviews and had great perspective about just all the many, many, many people that he'd worked with, and just a real sad loss. What's something that I like about his portrayal of Gul Madred is that he's a different kind of Cardassian. Like you said, we think of like Mark Alimo as maybe being the main kind of Cardassian. And one of the great things about Cardassians is two things. One, they aren't just, a lot of Klingons are pretty similar. in some ways, especially when they act as antagonists. But like the Cardassians can be every kind of like villain or bad guy. You see a lot of different kinds of villainy in their Cardassians, but also Cardassians who spent so much time on DS9 as just characters don't have to fall into that. Romulans are sneaky, Klingons, like getting in fights. They just became, humans, just characters, people, and they could be nice or they could be bad, and we see that they are. Their actions are often informed by the very brutal society that they come from. But the fact that, Gul Madred is just, Cardassian or no, he's just somebody who is obsessed with superiority and obsessed with kind of breaking Picard. And we see how weak this straw man ultimately is when he runs up against somebody who has the strength that Picard does, and the way that Warner portrays both the parts where he's brutalizing Picard, but when he starts to come apart as well. It's just down to his talent. Like he was really great.
Yeah, and I actually have to admit, it wasn't until recently that I knew that one was his role. Actually, he kind of, I don't know, like he has a very iconic, distinct voice to me that sticks in my head. But for some reason, maybe it's the makeup and his acting in that, but I didn't recognize it as him. Whereas in the other stuff he's been in Trek, like I immediately was like. Well, my first go-to point was like, the Ninja Turtles guy. But right, he kind of just disappears into the role, as they say,
Yeah, and he had no trouble doing that kind of, genre fare, be it, a time travel Jack the Ripper movie, for Nick Warner, or doing, I'll do a Star Trek, sure. But then at the same time, he's up on stage and he's doing Shakespeare and he's doing all these type of material. So I think that's really great.
Yeah.
And another very sad thing, on the same day, actor Paul Sorvino passed away at the age of 83. And that's very sad as well. He's probably best known as his character from Goodfellas, Paulie. But just another guy who, you hear about, people tell stories about him and how he was just a really nice guy. He was probably a character actor, never had like a huge, I think, breakout thing, but he didn't he play Kissinger in Nixon, and also was another guy who,
can see that. I've never seen that.
Was another guy who did comedy, would do genre stuff, wasn't afraid to just get out there and try movies and try TV. And like was a guy who I think he's a good actor, but he definitely is like you're getting him. Do you know what I mean? Like you are hiring Paul Sorvino when you get him for a role. And so he's just sort of, whether it's a drama or whether it's a comedy, he's still kind of like the same kind of imposing guy, but was able to play against other people in very effective ways.
Yeah, I love him. Goodfellas is one of my favorites. He's in Trek. Plays Worf's brother, right?
Yeah, he's Worf's bro.
I feel like he would have been a great like admiral who shows up for an episode. You know what I mean?
Sure.
They should have. That would have been great. But yeah, he's awesome too. It's too bad. Yeah, both at the same time. And I think it was just on. I think it was on Discoverage. We were just talking about James Caan and how sad that was, and it just felt like, that's so many. That's so many all at once.
Yeah, I don't know why they don't stunt cast admirals more. If it's a recurring role, I understand that you got to keep the person around. Maybe you want somebody who is going to fit a certain conception for the character. But it's weird that if an admiral's going to come on and say "good job" or "hey, what are you doing," why not just put somebody famous? Have a get in there.
Yeah, or like that was cool, like the Kelsey Grammer thing.
Yeah, we had that Kelsey Grammer thing, and that's like the one time that just an actor's like, "Hey, can I do a Star Trek?" Sure, come on in, why not?
Yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, they've got some good admirals going right now, but it'd be cool if they just who would be a good get.
Oh, not to disparage Jane Brooke or Oded Fair or any of the other admirals that we've had, but yeah, just get I don't know. What's Anthony Hopkins up to?
Yes, yeah, that's a great pick.
You could come in as the senior admiral for something and just do one of those, like, one of these Anthony Hopkins speeches. Everybody's like, oh boy, we got to do what that guy says.
Yeah, they got to have that in the budget.
I hope so. Hopefully we'll see that someday. As far as budgets go, Maybe not, because gosh darn, a lot of Star Trek coming up. San Diego Comic
Oh
Con was
yeah, I
last
saw
weekend.
this. I actually
And
was aware of the news before you tell me. I'm ready.
okay,
I'm ready to react.
well, you're ready to jump right in with some of the news then. First of all, I'll report some. Well, this is a non-news item. We still don't know. No announcement about Star Trek 4. And because he was on the red.
It's not gonna happen.
Yeah, I don't know. Because he was on the red carpet for his up and coming Dungeons and Dragons movie, Chris Pine was, of course, asked about Star Trek, and he had very little to say about it. He just said he hasn't heard anything other than that they want to do one. Apparently, Variety, a source for Variety, has said that his purported salary for the film is up to $13 million, is what he'd be expecting to get for that. You know, it's funny that for a franchise about a place without money, it all comes down to money, as it always does.
Oh, big, yeah, of course.
And so it seems like they're balking at the idea that they're going to pay another $13 million. I have, and if listeners to Enterprising Individuals will get to see the thing play out in real time as this year continues and concludes, but I have turned just about all the way around on the Kelvin films, and I'm ready for a Star Trek 4 in the Kelvin universe. But at the same time, I'm ready to drop it if money's a problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like other franchises have done this. You know, you think about Star Wars. Sure, you got to pay Carrie Fisher. You got to pay Harrison Ford to come back. But other than that, you go out and you get some fresh-faced new stars and you make them famous and you just go for it. And I don't know why they can't do that with Star Trek. They've done that in a lot of ways for their TV shows. But, you know, go out and find an up-and-comer, a film star, somebody on the big screen, get them together, and let's just do another adventure in the Star Trek universe.
Well, especially because the best Star Trek movies that there are, you know, it's made up of like actors who came from TV, you know, and they were stars in their day, but they weren't like, I don't know, I can't imagine they're getting like Chris Pine salary. Like he's like a bigger star, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Just make a movie with some of the cast they got now.
Yeah.
Discovery movie or something.
Yeah, I don't. I've been mostly really happy with the casting on a lot of the new Star Trek shows. So I think they're definitely doing something right there. And it would be easy to just find somebody and, you know, just say, you want to do a Star Trek? Because there's no stigma at this point, right? Back in the day, you hear like Brent Spiner's like, I don't know, do I do this Star Trek? I'm going to be a Star Trek guy forever. And I don't that's gone now. Like, I don't know if you've seen the Thor movie yet, but completely worthless spoilers for the very last scene, the end credits scene of Thor. But they reveal that, you know, the hero Hercules will be coming to the MCU, and he's played by some guy I don't even know from Ted Lasso, who, I mean, I'm the only person on earth who probably doesn't watch Ted Lasso, but it's like, you know, the fifth or sixth guy on the call sheet on Ted Lasso is going to play this hero. He's probably totally jazzed to be in an MCU movie. You know, they just had the Wakanda trailer, and we see the actor that plays Namor, and he's like, you know, he's big in his native Mexico, but he's like a no-name here, and I'm sure that he's like super excited to join this franchise. So yeah, go out and people are hungry. Go out and get some people, put together a Star Trek movie, have a cameo from Seven or from Patrick Stewart while he can still do one, and let's get this thing fired up.
Yeah, I'm with you totally. Like, there's great people they got. They've proven that they can cast pretty good people. So I think they should just go fresh.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about the opposite side of being fresh. We now have seen a teaser for the third season of Picard, along with some very smart-looking character posters that were released after the Hall H panel for Star Trek Universe at San Diego Comic-Con. And we've got the entire crew, minus, of course, Brent Spiner as Data, although Brent Spiner will be apparently involved in the...
Play another Soong.
Something. Yeah, I don't know. But we see Picard and Beverly Crusher, Geordi, Riker, Troy, an older Worf, as well as Raffi and Seven returning from previous seasons.
Yeah. I don't know how to feel about this. I'm ready. I would, you know, those characters are awesome and stuff, but I feel like I'm ready to move on from Picard, and this feels like the last gasp of like please nostalgia by like, all right, fine, here's everyone. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like this last season especially felt like Mad Libs of like various Picard adventures thrown together, and this, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I want to see this or not, but hopefully it'll be good.
Yeah, you mentioned Last Gasp. I think this thing is a long distance runner. I don't think we're going to be done with nostalgia anytime soon.
Oh, no, I just mean with the Picard in general. Everything else is definitely nostalgia. We're seeing Chakotay and Janeway in a show. We've got Strange New Worlds is all nostalgia, but I don't know.
I don't think. Yeah, this is definitely it for Patrick Stewart. Who, by the way, Patrick Stewart, he gets up there, he does his lines, he's acting still, he's doing a great job. But I don't know. I guess I haven't tracked the history of his interviews, but recently he's going wild. He's shooting from the hip. He's letting all kinds of things go, and you never know if he has all the facts straight, because I'm sure he's got a lot he's got to deal with, and he doesn't know what these sci-fi nerds are writing for him to say.
I'm sure, yeah.
But he said recently something about how they were back on the old sets. He's like, we returned to the old Enterprise, and I forgot that we had carpet. And people are like, oh, are they going to be on the Enterprise D? And I think, personally, yeah, obviously, I think the Enterprise D will make some kind of appearance. But Terry Matalas, the showrunner for Season 3 and for Picard Season 2, took to Twitter to quickly do a little bit of spin. He said, I'm shutting this down before people get their hopes up. It's not what you think. So what the F are they talking about? Get it? What the F? Okay, I'll see myself out. So that the Matalas brand of humor on display there. But it seems like he's suggesting that we'll see the Enterprise F in Picard Season 3.
Oh, I get it now.
Gooey, I know that you're a funny person, so I'm going to assume that Terry Matalas is so bad at comedy that it took you a little bit to figure out what he was talking about.
Yeah, maybe it's better if you read it, because I was I want to see the big
right.
F.
No, it was my delivery.
The F are they talking about?
Yes.
I was like, yes. What is this? What is he referring to? That's lame.
Yeah. Well, he's a professional showrunner for a TV show. So I don't know. We'll see. Speculation runs rampant. They've said that there will be a Khan level villain for this third season. As we know, Star Trek real great at doing villains.
It's the only villain they know how to deliver. It's either they say,
yeah, maybe we'll see the effects of Operation Khan. Who knows? Maybe Brett Spiner will be involved in that capacity.
They just open up their idea box for a Star Trek movie or show, and they're like, it either says Khan or Borg.
Or yeah, right.
What do we do? And they're like, well, we did Borg, and now it's Khan level.
Yeah,
that's not what I don't want to see that.
I am not excited to either. This is what books are for, right? I mean, they blew up the books, of course. Like Star Wars, they're creating a new book universe, and I think that's cool. But this is where you would just write a cool book or novella about the last days of the crew, and not having to kill them all off or something like that.
Yeah.
We get an idea of what they all kind of got up to before they became kind of irrelevant, if that is even possible in Star Trek. I want to say really fast that I've got a little more Picard news, but I'm going to move on to the announcement that we got at SDCC that Strange New Worlds would be crossing over with Lower Decks in its second season.
Yes, I did see that. This I'm okay with.
Yeah.
I think because, Star Trek always has done the, this guy's popping over on this show, Bashir's over on the Enterprise. I feel like maybe they didn't announce it months ahead. Maybe you'd be watching TV and they'd be like, this week on, I'm just guessing, they'd be like, Quark shows up on TNG or whatever. But I don't know. This seems like a fun idea.
Yeah. Apparently the episode will feature both live action and animation. I they'll figure it out. They know what they're doing, or it doesn't matter. Both of those simultaneously. We know that we saw the animated short treks, which, as far as I know, are canon, and they feature, like animated versions of Kirk and Spock and the original Enterprise. The fact that it'll have both live action and animation, are we to assume? I'm just trying to get into my head here, like that Boimler and Mariner are real people. The show's canon, but we see them in animated form for their show, and so they will show up perhaps as their live action selves on the Enterprise through time travel or something like that, but then they'll all get cartooned somehow. Maybe Q will be involved and it'll turn them into cartoons. My point is, doesn't this dilute the brand of both things? So many problems are caused by Lower Decks being canon. Why does Lower Decks have to be canon? Just make it a cartoon show. It's fine. Maybe it's a show that exists in the universe of Star Trek. Maybe people watch Lower Decks in Star Trek, and then you could have Pike get involved with them in an Eddie Valiant type style. I've already heard Roger Rabbit used as a touchstone a couple times for this thing. I don't know.
I feel like I'm okay with, because I don't really care too much about like canon too much, but especially for a kid's show.
We're talking about Strange New Worlds today, canon in time crystallized form.
Yeah,
but
there's definitely things I always complain about because I feel like it does like kind of contradict things or whatever. But I feel like if I'm watching the show, I'm like, yeah, this stuff generally happens, but it's silly, so it doesn't really matter. But like, I don't know, I could see what I would do is you have them cross over, but you just play it straight like a normal episode, but maybe they're a bit, they've kind of got their sense of humor and they're kind of played this way. And maybe if you did like time travel, if they went to the future, maybe when they're there, it's animated, but just don't even point it out. They're just animated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that might be kind of fun.
Yeah. This is a Lids franchise. There's a lot of hats here that they're gonna put on.
There's stuff super negative on this one. I would say like cautiously optimistic for me. Like I feel like there's a chance.
Can you imagine a world? Maybe this is the world we want to live in. Maybe this is our Omelas, but where no one is negative on the internet.
I don't even think I want to live on that world.
I don't want to be negative, but I also don't want to be somebody who's like, all right, yeah, just give me everything. I can't see how this will work, but they've made things work. They've made stuff work in the past. I guess you didn't know that a robot and a tardigrade were present when Kirk and Spock were meeting Khan, and that didn't destroy the universe.
Yeah.
So who cares?
Right, exactly.
Speaking about what's coming up in the future, I've decided that Alex Kurtzman is the Stan Lee of Star Trek. Right.
Good.
Although
is this good or bad?
Well, it's both.
Okay.
It's not perfectly accurate because Stan Lee really didn't have a lot of like creative input into Marvel, past the mid 70s. But he was the guy who, when the first time around that Marvel tried to really go for movies and become like a multi-franchise or multimedia brand, he was out there on the talk shows. He was speaking at colleges, and he's like, true believers, these amazing stories. Let's talk about them. And that's kind of like what Alex Kurtzman does, in addition to producing and writing. Like, people ask him questions, and his answer is always, pretty good idea. We'll see. That's his version of being a pitch man. And so he was asked by a lot of people during the panel at Comic-Con about what would be coming up. And TrekMovie.com just reports this as new series, but I think it's more just him kind of focus grouping Hall H. But a deaf fan asked about the character of Hemmer and if they would, if the franchise would be returning to the character, but also if they would be committing to having a deaf crew member or a deaf cast member in the future. And he says, Kurtzman, in response to that, said, "Oh, that's a great idea. It's something we'll take into consideration for the next 2 Star Trek shows that we're currently developing."
Oh.
So we know from his mouth that there are 2 shows that they're developing. Now, is that just the Section 31 show and the already announced in development Starfleet Academy show? We don't know. He didn't really clarify that at all. So somebody else should have came up and asked that, I guess. But he did say when somebody asked about a possible spinoff with a female captain-led show, possibly featuring Jerry Ryan or maybe Gates McFadden, he said, well, anything's possible. But he said, without revealing much, that you could certainly expect to see to see more Star Trek shows with female leads.
Okay. Well, I could still be talking about Section 31, maybe.
Yeah, or Starfleet Academy if Tilly will be a part of that.
Oh, yeah.
People seem to think that will happen.
Okay, so you don't like him because he's just a tease?
Yeah, he doesn't... Okay.
That stuff doesn't really bother me because, like, for me personally, it's like...
Thanks for stoking my ire about Alex Kurtzman because I got a big rant coming up, but I'll try to make it more. I'll make it more organic to our discussion later.
There's plenty of reasons to dislike this guy. I would agree with, but like, it's like they can keep announcing this stuff, but it's like they also announce like real things and there's a billion of them, and I'm like I'm gonna forget about half of them until they come out. So like, okay, whatever. He said there's more. Who cares?
You and I are cursed. We can't forget though. Fans will forget. They'll get the serotonin rush. They'll get the pop from him saying that. And then, they'll just forget all about it. But we are the chroniclers. Like we have to.
Yeah.
I have to open up a folder that says female-led Star Trek series that he mentioned. And nothing is going to go in that folder for years. I have an empty folder that says Section 31 on it. Do you know what I mean? Uh-huh. And like, it's one thing if you are like you were there. We saw Kate Mulgrew at Mission Chicago, and she took a lot of like the whole panel was questions from the audience. She took a lot of questions, and people are excited about seeing Janeway again. They asked her if maybe she'll show up on Picard, and she's like, well, stay tuned. Now she's an actress who needs to promote herself. She'll take any role. She wants to be on the show. And so if she can jazz up the fans, they'll maybe they'll tweet and they'll hashtag and they'll lean on producers to get something like that to happen. So that can benefit her. He's in charge of all these things. He should have plans. He should be developing it. He should know what's coming. Do you know what I mean? Like he's acting like he's lower status. Like I'm not trying to say that he should be like, no, next question. But he just acts. He acts like he's what is it? He's like sort of soft shoe dancing, for the fans. Like he's trying to get them. He doesn't need to like jazz them up. He can just make decisions behind the scenes and then go, bam, there's your female-led, Star Trek show.
Well, that wouldn't be good for getting the
along.
Rumor mill and all the buzz.
But why But it's not a rumor if it's actually happening, Then he could just say, there it is. But instead, he's making a terrible series remake of The Man Who Fell to Earth. Oh, Gooey, I can't let it go just yet. We gotta work our way up to it still. We're not there. I'm at 75%. I will say Terry Metalis can retweet like a MFer though. There's
that's not good for engagement.
Well, right now on his, I don't know, maybe this is his original, I don't know, but right now on his Twitter feed, he's got a mock-up Picard poster, and it's got the final season, and it's a picture of Armis with a long gray beard. He's like, guess who's coming back? So that's
okay. So he's got the opposite strategy where he's telling you everything, but it's all horseshit. But for fun. Okay,
you have to pick out.
I like that better. Actually,
what's real?
Yeah, I just can't get about the Kurtzman thing because I know nothing they will announce. Like, I'll just be like, okay, I hope it's good. So, like, I guess he's not stoking anything in me in the first place. So,
well, I guess as far as like getting things done, I complain about the things that he says he's going to do, and it's really like this Starfleet Academy thing we've been waiting on forever, and the Section 31 thing too, which is tied to a actress who is very hot right now. Like I loved her last movie, and I'm glad that it made the most money that an A24 film has made. But it just put Section 31 another 5 years out of reach, right?
That's another Chris Pine issue.
We'll never see this show with her in the lead. So, but all that being said, they should probably put him in charge. Oh my God, they never will because of the Mummy. and I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm going to shit on him so much from such a high height later, but I'm going to give him a compliment now.
Oh my God.
He can get things done. He made this ridiculous fucking Man Who Fell to Earth TV show. He's got 5 Trek shows on the air and 2 more to come. Put him in charge of Star Trek 4. We would have a Star Trek 4. Good or bad, it would exist.
I feel like it might not exist right now because he's not doing it. Like that.
Yeah.
That might be the main thing holding it back, is that like no one else. They say they want to do it, but no one really cares about making this movie that much.
Well, they like money, don't they? I mean, they like franchises. They like getting people to come see their films, and so I just think that.
But I think everyone's got so burnt out on the Kelvin movies, even though I liked the last one, like where it's like it's not going to make the most money ever made, so they don't care. It's not going to be like
right, but
a Marvel.
That's but Hollywood has such a short memory. They forgot like what a mid-budget movie is. Like all of the Star Trek films, with only a few exceptions, were mid-budget films, and mid-budget films don't exist anymore. And so we're never going to get this goddamn movie, A, for that reason, and B, because unfortunately, Kurtzman tanked a multi-billion-dollar franchise when he was at Universal. So I don't know. Give it a couple more years. Maybe he'll continue to succeed, and then they'll be willing to try it with less money. But I say take the less money and just go for it. Set it in do a time travel. Set it in the past and use the Paramount backlot sets, and people are in bustles. save a little cash.
That would be awesome. Wow.
I've been watching a lot of Quantum Leap recently because I'm preparing for my appearance at the upcoming Convergence Convention in the Twin Cities in August, and I'm on a Quantum Leap panel. And I was thinking about this show and the fact that every single week they've got to go and do another location, another time period. They've got to get the costumes right. Plus, it's being watched by eagle-eyed boomers who were there, so you can't fake the funk too much because people aren't going to accept it. And the show could not have cost. The show probably what led to its kind of early cancellation is the cost, but it couldn't have cost that much. Like it's not a very flashy show, but yet you have to put all this time and effort and production design into making the verisimilitude of the eras really come across. And they do a really good job, and I think they did it on a fairly acceptable budget. So I just don't know why we can't get one of these Star Trek movies going. But anyway, I don't know. We can complain more about that the next time we talk about a Star Trek movie, I guess.
And we'll have more to complain about Alex Kurtzman later, I guess.
Yes, more Alex Kurtzman rants to come. But first, let's get into it and get to our featured subject for this week's episode. The idea of a federation or a galactic ruling body made up of many worlds across the Milky Way is one that predates the release of Star Trek in 1966. Science fiction literature is full of interplanetary ruling bodies, going all the way back to the Civilization of the Lensman series, or the Galactic Empire of Asimov's Foundation books, or the Carino Empire of the Dune series of novels. All these examples in some way inspired the creation of the Federation and of Starfleet, but the humanist values that define Federation life and the stories that explore humanist allegory in Star Trek owe a great deal to the Hainish cycle of stories and novels by legendary sci-fi and fantasy author Ursula K. LeGuin. In her 60-year career, LeGuin published over 20 novels and over 100 short stories, including landmark titles like The Left Hand of Darkness, The Dispossessed, The Lathe of Heaven, and The Earthsea stories. LeGuin was preoccupied with studying humanity through the lens of alien societies, and her works explore the themes of war, anarchism, collectivism, ecology, communication, gender, feminism, psychology, sociology, and much more. One of her stories, which won a Hugo in 1974, briefly explores a utopian civilization not unlike what one would imagine the Federation to be, whose entire prosperity is predicated on the unremitting torture and neglect of a mentally deficient child. And the story asks the reader to speculate on who are the ones who walk away from Omelas. Had you read this story before we read it for this?
As you were going through all this too, I was like, yeah, that's right, that's her. And I was sort of thinking like, I haven't read anything by her before, and I was kind of feeling like a scrub. And I was looking back at our previous episodes, and I tried to like go beyond the homework for those, and just this week, or like these past few weeks in particular, I've been so busy, and I was
Yeah.
like, dang, like a lot of this stuff sounds really good. Like I really would like to check some of it out. But yeah, I'm totally new to it.
Yeah, I'm woefully underread on LeGuin. Something that if I ever get time, I'd like to change as well. I felt bad, kind of bad, that I haven't really read the Dune novels other than the first one. But I feel really bad that I haven't read LeGuin as much as I should. I've read The Lathe of Heaven a while ago, but I don't remember it very well. And
Mm.
somebody tried to get me into Earthsea when I was in like junior high or high school.
Right. Yeah, that's a big one I remember.
But I had not read this before. I was familiar with the idea behind it and what happens in it, but I was surprised initially at how short it is, how brief it is. I mean, it's a short story. I mean, that's the idea, but
Right. Yeah.
it really gets to it and then gets out.
Yes, it's like boiled down to like the finer points of what is trying to be gotten across. The way it's written, it started off like I thought feeling more like a regular story, and then like almost right away it switches into, it feels like someone like just like actually talking to you and describing this sort of like thought experiment almost,
Yeah, yeah.
And so yeah, it was interesting. It felt like just reading like a little blurb that someone wrote to me, and they're like, think about this, huh? What if there was a really shitty kid?
Right, yeah.
I was like, whoa.
Despite its short length, I mean, depending on how the font and how you read it, it's 4 or 5 pages tops. Like it really takes you through this roller coaster ride, and the ride has like 2 parts, and I love how it's being related to you by an unknown narrator saying. Who's not even really sure about the details or doesn't want to get specific about the details because they're just trying to say, like, there's this amazing town. It's called Omelas, and it's fantastic. And, like, I don't know, it's kind of like whatever you think it ought to be. It's like...
Yeah, I like that. That was funny. It's like, literally
it,
felt someone being like, whatever, don't worry,
Yeah, right. Don't worry about it. They've solved all their problems. Do they have like spaceships and stuff like that? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe if you want, it doesn't really matter. It's whatever you kind of think that it is, and it makes the point, at least in the first half, that it's not you when you think of like a utopia and a dystopia, and even when the 70s, when she's writing this, like we have an idea that like, okay, dystopia is like Big Brother's view screens watching you, and a utopia is like, oh, this is pretty great, we've fixed all these problems, everybody gets everything that you need. And she kind of makes a point early on about how like there aren't that fiction, it's sort of commentary, like that fiction is, especially genre fiction, is kind of obsessed with showing you like these horrible sort of worlds, and I think the point that it's making is that seems to be more attractive. Like happiness is boring, and there's a line in the story that says, we have a bad habit of considering happiness as something stupid, that only pain is intellectual and only evil is interesting. And she says, this is the treason of the artist, a refusal to admit the banality of evil and the terrible boredom of pain. And so you think that you're being set up for this. Hey, don't worry about it. Like, look at this. This is a great place. And you think that only if there's going to be a snake in this garden are we going to have a story here. And that isn't necessarily true. Like this is a rich world, and the people here aren't lotus eaters. They're not idiots. They're, intellectually sophisticated, and they're having a good time. They're cool with drug use and free love and all these things that you want to see in like your utopia. Great. Now hold on for a second. Meme where we pull the wheel over and take the exit. Now imagine somewhere else.
Wait,
imagine
what you're saying is there's no Khan level villain?
Society is the villain. Man is the real villain. Yeah. And the story just before we get to that part, I wanted to just quote one thing. This is how it breaks down. If an orgy would help, don't hesitate. She says, like, if you want to imagine they're having an orgy, great, just put an orgy in there.
Right. It almost feels like when you're trying, like you're trying to describe it to someone, but like everyone has their own particular idea of like the perfect world, and you're like,
Yeah.
and they're like interrupting you almost, and you're like
Yeah.
trying to like just whatever you think is great, that's there,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, and it's
Cotton
important.
candy, it's there.
Yeah, and it's important because in order for the entire thing to land, it has to be the perfect world for you within a certain range. If you want to see swastikas on every column, we got a problem. But like most people, the kind of sort of general liberal that would be shocked by this and probably needs to hear this, the point of this story is going to imagine a utopia, a free society is looking a certain way. And so, yeah, the narrator and by extension, the author's like, let's not get bogged down in the details. It is what you think it is. It's exactly what you want it to be.
Yeah, which I kind of appreciate. Yeah, because like that happens a lot. Like with Star Trek being like, it's like, oh, it's a utopia, and then
is there
like,
money? Isn't there money? They're not communists. They they get paid.
right? People get hung up on like, well, they do this, like this wouldn't happen then, and I get hung up on that kind of stuff sometimes. But
Yeah,
I like this is just like put it all out of your mind.
Yeah, because hold up a minute, we gotta jerk the wheel over into the next part of the story, which is going underground into a cellar where an idiot child is held captive there in squalor and filth. And the book or the story tells us, without elaborating, that all this wonderful world, the utopia of Omelas, depends wholly on this child's abominable misery.
Yes.
And we are given no details about this. We don't know why. It is just the way that it is.
Right. Yeah. There's no like setup to like this does this. It's just like, yeah, that's all we need to know, basically, for what the point they're trying to get across.
Yeah. The story says that the terms are strict and absolute about the child's imprisonment. There may not even be a kind word spoken to the child. So that's what's going on here. And
yeah, and in particular, they like the thing they sort of talk about is how all the people who live there like know that, and they have to like go, like some people go to see it and like feel bad about it or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah, it describes how, people, I think it says usually young people, go there to see the child, and some leave in tears and some leave, angry. And it also describes how over time people just kind of accept it, and they start to rationalize it and justify it. I think one of the popular arguments it says in the story is that even if you let this little child out, like what good would it be? Like we're given the suggestion that it's kind of mentally deficient, and it says it's been, quote, it's been afraid too long ever to be free of fear. It would always be hounded by its experience, and its habits are too uncouth for it to respond to humane treatment. It would probably be wretched without walls to protect it, for darkness for its eyes and for its own excrement to sit in.
Right. Yeah. So you kind of get any way to kind of justify. I mean, it's obviously a metaphor or whatever for all the,
Gooey. We got another half an hour to fill. A metaphor or whatever is not gonna. It's
well,
not gonna do it justice.
What I guess
we're gonna have to talk about it.
No, I was gonna elaborate. Because what I'm thinking about is now I lost my train of thought. But the idea of there's so many things that stick out of the metaphor of like all these horrible things that we allow to happen because the way our society is set up. And we have a million ways to justify it, and then that's always like a big one at the end of it is like for any issue basically, okay, let's talk, like, for example, like what, imprisoning kids at the border, separating them from their family. You get like their family brought them here, and like that they would be more unsafe if we didn't imprison them, and or like stuff like that. There was a Enterprise episode I watched last night about where they kind of did an internment camp thing. For the
speaking of Quantum Leap,
right. And they had the same sort of thing. Like, well, these guys wouldn't survive if we didn't keep them in these internment camps. So
right. And it's
Right.
one thing when you've got Dean Stockwell in a Nazi uniform, it's another when the people who are accepting this are the fun, free love drug guys who live upstairs, you know what I mean, who are having a good time.
Hmm.
And as far as we know, experience no other real problems in their society. Class divisions, race divisions, these don't exist. It all balances on top of this kid. I mean, you want to talk about Star Trek and the needs of the many outweighing the needs of the one. You've got the possible refutation to that idea, right here.
Hmm. Well,
And I,
and then I also think though, um, they don't really hit on this in in the story that much. They just say like, what if there was another way? But I think, like, I don't think it's purely a refutation of that because I think there's the idea of we could maybe set like maybe that's not true. Maybe it's not true that if we don't imprison this kid, like our society will fall apart. You know what I mean?
mhm.
And that's why I think when people are like, "Oh, you want this social program, you're a socialist." Well, you've seen like what happens if this is implemented elsewhere, and it's like I don't think that's true. That's like a lie, and so I don't think it's implicit in the story. But
Well,
I
no,
think
because
the
we
idea
don't
of
know
yeah,
the mechanism at all. We don't know why this has happened, who decided this. We don't. It's
and
I don't know if this is what's intended, but I think it is a metaphor for the societal forces that we struggle with now. Where you want to talk about like critical race theory, like the reason that things are the way they are, and how just inculcated into our society, how institutional some of these ills are, that we can't even think intellectually about their source. It just becomes, like you said, well, if you don't, want to be locked in a cage, then I guess you shouldn't come here. And that doesn't take into account all of the fuckery and interference and all the ways that like the US and the Western world has kept, Central and South America down to the point where they would need to, to get help from the US and their largesse.
right, yeah, this and the idea of like something like it's just like accepted as fact, the idea that like well, some people have to live in total squalor so that these people can maintain a comfortable life. And like it also it like the idea of them going to visit the child and like get all upset about it makes me think of too like the idea of like some of these things existing to like scare other people. You know what I mean? Like it has to be this way or you could end up like this. Like I think that's what scares a lot of people about walking away from Omelas is that uh you know you're afraid of, you don't know any other way, you could end up in squalor like the child or like
Yeah.
something like that. So there's sort of that, it's not even just like this exists to keep us functioning, like part of the function is to scare you into continuing to function in that society.
Yeah. It says in the story about the people who, go to view the child, that their tears at the bitter injustice dry when they begin to perceive the terrible justice of reality and to accept it. That same idea of maybe consciously or unconsciously, you think, well, I mean, it could be me. It's not me, so it's somebody else.
Yeah.
I think that is something that is behind even the best intentioned people in our society. And here I go with the leftist stuff again, but just the idea that
Well, what are you talking about here? This
like when you
story?
suggest, why don't we just cancel student loans? Like it just ruins people's lives. It only makes a very small amount of people rich. And somebody else says, well, I had to pay mine. It's like, great. I'm glad that you were able to pay them. But did you enjoy that? Wouldn't you like somebody else to be free from that? And I think people, whether they're economists or not, they envision, the bottom falling out of economic society and chaos if we don't maintain these institutions. And that gets me to the titular ones who walk away from Omelas. And what we also don't know where they're going. We don't know exactly why, although we can, I think we can assume that they're disgust or their just disenchantment with the situation in the city.
They're just like walking.
They're just they're
They're
just
out
walkers.
for a walk. It's nice
Just
out.
nice night.
Yeah, it's left kind of vague.
It's left vague, and I think that one. This, of course, was written in the early to mid 70s, sort of after the movements of the 60s, and I think that you can see in this a criticism of the kind of liberals, revolutionaries, young people who had a cause at one time. They get older, they have kids in a station wagon, and they're kind of willing to accept more than they were before. It's kind of a criticism, I think, of that. But also, it's weird. These people aren't burning Omelas down. They're not freeing the kid. Do you know what I mean? Like they are, to use a parlance of the time, they're dropping out. Do you know what I mean? Like it isn't helpful. It shows their protest, but it doesn't. And I don't expect a 4-page short story to give us all the answers, but they're not really doing anything about it. And so I don't know if the story is trying to suggest if these people are supposed to also be sad because they also kind of refuse to do anything, or if it just their moral responsibility ends like once they leave the community.
Yeah, I didn't,
because something that I'm really frustrated with right now is that I think that we are kind of going through the 60s of the 21st century right now, and there are a lot of people who are upset about a lot of totally justified and righteously about causes, but I see people cool on those causes. I see them walk away from these causes. I don't think that we are in a total decline yet, but I can see it happening in the same way to the revolutionaries of today. And something that I get frustrated about is like Star Trek fans, not all the Star Trek fans I know, but a lot of Star Trek fans that I know are very positive about the liberal values of Star Trek, but they're not active at all in their communities. They don't try to make those values manifest in their world. They are quite content to enjoy the adventures of Picard and the good speeches that he gives, and then they walk through their world, and everybody else in their world is the child. You know what I mean? Is the thing that they kind of ignore, and that's kind of the most powerful interpretation of the metaphor for me, at least in terms of sort of what we do here.
Yeah. The end, I hadn't considered myself like that idea of walking away and like leaving, I know that's literally what's like happening, but I like just thought of it in the like the metaphor sense of like walking away from like that life, that sort of participating in that. Like I know it literally means to like take themselves out of it, but I guess I never really thought about that. I thought of it more of just the like no, I'm not going to put up with this, and I'm leaving that type thing. And that, I think that could be interpreted in my way of too, of like just like sort of rejecting that orthodoxy, as opposed to like I'm gonna move to Canada or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I don't know, I see what you mean too. I guess that's sort of it sort of is just sort of a story that kind of gets you thinking about the topic, and that's why, like, even though it was kind of vague at the end what it's going for at the end, it still worked for me.
Yeah, I in the 21st century, and this is nothing against LeGuin's intentions or talent. Yeah. I just think like over the evolution of 50 years of sci-fi, like I think we need more at this point. And somebody who I think agrees with me is N.K. Jemisin, the sci-fi writer who I would probably call the modern Ursula Le Guin. Like, she is very prolific. She's extremely talented, has won a ton of awards and wrote a lot. She has an anthology of stories called How Long Till Black Future Month. And she has a short story in it called The Ones Who Stay and Fight, which is itself a kind of pastiche of Omelas. But the characters in that story are faced with a similar sort of arrangement and have a little bit more proactive kind of response to it. And in an interview about it, she said that she meant to for it to be something of an update to the story, that she didn't think that LeGuin thought that you should. Readers misinterpret the story as like, you just got to drop out, man. You just got to drop out of the society. And that she thinks that LeGuin's, assertion was that you have to change this. You have to fix the society for the better, because there is nowhere to walk away to. And something
I agree.
I think a theme that runs through all of Le Guin's work is really the failure of government. She was, I don't know if she was like a bomb-throwing anarchist, but she was very critical of systems of government and sort of top-down, administration of people, that like people needed to go from the bottom up. We needed to work small, for the big goal, and you can't just legislate things, and you can't just have dictatorial rulers and societies telling people what to do. Like, you have to start at the small level. So I don't know, like, it doesn't matter for the story, but I don't know, maybe they all meet outside of Omelas and then organize a party to go back into Omelas.
Yeah, it'd be easier to do from the inside, I would imagine, but
yeah.
That's interesting, because sometimes too, like, the idea of Star Trek fans maybe being happy with like the liberal order or whatever, or like that idea of like, like we're happy and nice, but like we're like that is kind of like a layer.
It's the back to brunch idea, right?
But that's that's not really a thing that's necessarily present in Star Trek, but I think Star Trek sometimes does feel like it's written for that type of person. It's just about like, watch this, like, we're gonna go here, look at how awful this is, like, thank goodness we think that's bad. As long as you think it's bad, you're a good person. That's all you got to worry about.
I think I think when Stacey Abrams shows up in the last episode of Star Trek Discovery, that's exactly who we're writing for.
No,
not that Stacey Abrams is not a much better person than any of us, but the sort of
I think you should just
the sort of lip service. It's not really lips, whatever, eye service, whatever it is. The sort of like just basic nod to social justice that is in a season that's full of just explosions and flying around to God knows where, and not really doing stories like Lift Us Up Where Suffering Cannot Reach. Is kind of what we're dealing with a lot. Like something like Lower Decks isn't trying to say, hey, we're trying to make big points about humanity and about society here. But Discovery as kind of the flagship, I think it would position itself as that. And I think they think that they're killing it. And I think that they're not doing much. I think that it has kind of devolved into this sort of, it's good. Life is good, but it could be better. And as long as we all maintain positivity and keep watching Star Trek, we'll get there someday.
Stop complaining about our student loans.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Stop complaining. You got a bucket to shit in. You got a bucket for food. What's your problem?
Yeah. I'm with you there.
We could talk about the inspirations behind the story that she drew on, but we're just going to get into even more stuff that I have not read.
Okay.
Like the brothers Karamazov, I think she has cited Dostoevsky specifically as an inspiration, not only for this story, but a lot of her fiction. There's a specific sort of treatise or whatever you'd call it by philosopher William James called The Moral Philosopher and the Moral Life, where he specifically suggests a scenario like this. He envisions a world combined of all the sort of popular literary utopias of the day. What if you could have all of this and more on the simple condition that, one person who's, on the periphery would have to be tortured, for their entire life. And like, what impulse would that create in us? What emotion would we be able to, would we have to struggle with? And could we make that bargain? He suggests that it would be too hideous. He suggests that it would be impossible to enjoy that and to hold up that side of the bargain. And I think this story obviously says that for some people, no, that wouldn't be true. And I think real life reflects that as well.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. There's a lot of, I don't know, like stuff. I mean, even you just think about even in your own life, you know what I mean? Like what did it take to make like this iPhone that I have,
Oh my
or
God.
whatever, you know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
it goes, yeah, I think this can impact almost anyone.
Yeah. I think if you asked the good people of Omelas, they'd say, I have to participate in society. I don't like the fact that I do, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I have an iPhone. I'm forced to participate in the system that's here. I'd like to change it.
Right. There's got to be a better way. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say.
Vote, man. You got to vote as hard as you can.
That's all it takes.
All right. I'm going to nip off and shoot myself, and then maybe we'll be back after a break with more backtracking. How would you describe Just Enough Trope? We are the Just Enough Trope podcast. I'm your host, Caliban, joined as always by my co-host.
Hi, I'm Mikan Hana.
Oh no, does this mean they can hear all the things I yell at the TV during Downton Abbey?
Why did you do that?
How do you plead?
Let the game begin.
Yeah, check these fresh moves.
Oh!
Don't shoot man in face.
This isn't the Save Gotham fundraiser.
It's the Chill Family Reunion.
Master Yoda assigned a Padawan to this bold
I
Jedi.
think it's pronounced Padawan.
Oh, Padawan, excuse me.
Hey, it's getting late. I think Ralph's going to want his motorcycle back.
Go jerk off the pictures of Dean Gray.
I am freaking getting old.
Yeah, I noticed the life clock was blinking in your hand.
Get out of here, Wilson. Go fight the Teen Titans or something.
I'm unkillable, not unwoundable.
You like Sailor Moon, right? Why don't you sail on his
Oh, wow.
Just Enough Trope. News, reviews, and geek fondue every Monday on the Just Enough Trope podcast network.
Loving me never have a say. You so sorry.
What?
Okay, we're back. It's time to talk about the Trek side of this equation. The series Star Trek Strange New Worlds was commissioned as a return to classic weekly Trek storytelling. The voyages of the Starship Enterprise, 10 years before the events of the original series, but still seeking out new life and new civilizations, boldly going and finding themselves facing the moral quandaries that exist at the intersection of egalitarianism and practicality. The original series was no stranger to deriving inspiration from the classic sci-fi tales of its era, and the series that it inspired, Strange New Worlds, has followed in those footsteps as well, taking cues from both the sci-fi tales of yesteryear, as well as mining the history of its own franchise for inspiration. One episode from the series' first season goes once again to the fertile imagination of author Ursula K. LeGuin to tell a story of utopia and the price that one planet is willing to pay in order to preserve it. The result? Lift us where suffering cannot reach.
Let's go meet our guests.
Hi, you know her? Your new uniform is very yellow.
It's gold, technically, because I'm a captain.
The first servant is a holy child. Everyone on Majalis is his family.
I bet I could generate my own subspace frequency.
That would be an impressive feat.
The boy is in great danger. There's no one I can trust.
Red alert! What the hell is going on?
If the first servant doesn't ascend, we'll be destroyed.
There's things I like and dislike about the episode.
Well, let's talk about it. I'll tell you one thing before we get started. I'll tell you one thing. Michael Burnham would have got that kid back.
Oh no, no doubt they wouldn't even have thought about it. Well,
I was watching this episode and I was watching Anson Mount do his little sad face at the end of it, and like, oh, there's nothing we can do. Oh, classic Star Trek conundrum. We just have to fly away from this planet. There's nothing we can do. And I was like, Michael Burnham would have got that kid back. This would have happened halfway through. They would have plugged that kid into the electric chair, and then she would have went back to the ship and been like, we got to get this. We got to get him out of there. And they would have mounted a rescue, and hell or high water, they would have done it. And I say that kind of sneeringly at the story construction of Star Trek Discovery. But more and more, the people that I talk to, friends of mine who enjoy Star Trek, tend to have a consensus that maybe this whole, oh boy, so sad, is a bad thing in Star Trek. The Prime Directive, not interfering, not helping, letting things play out. Maybe that is being a person that lives in Omelas. Maybe Michael Burnham would have the right idea getting that kid back.
Yes and no, because I do think
That's the correct answer, of course.
well, there's some episodes where it's clearly set up of like, what are you doing? Like, you're just gonna let this planet blow up or whatever.
Yeah.
But usually, I mean, I think usually there's often times where they find a way around it, and I think the idea of setting that standard is maybe a good thing, because you don't want to like leave, I don't know, you don't want to leave it open to like, well, I guess like we were talking about the last however many decades, 100 years of American foreign policy, where they kind of get to disguise the things we're doing as like we're doing like liberal aid to the world, humanitarian aid to the world. And so I think that's generally a good thing, because, you know, like anyone can start to stretch those rules to do whatever you want. But yeah, there's plenty of episodes where it's like, obviously that's not the right thing to do. You know what I mean? And I think that's I've come around on Star Trek different ways, because I used to think, okay, it's a utopia, that's awesome. Then I watched Deep Space Nine and I was like, oh, this is like a deconstruction of it, the utopia, but it's really not. I think it's more of like, it still presents the utopian ideals, and then they challenge them. You know what I mean? And they start to show characters that sometimes they're challenged by these ideals, and sometimes like they get it right, sometimes they get it wrong, and that's kind of where I'm more at now. Of like, Star Trek isn't necessarily one idea of like how to behave in the future, but more of like it exists to like make you think about like what is the right thing to do, you know? And like any society that's like actually in good faith trying to do good can slip up, you know?
Yeah. I can't wait for, so here's the deal. I like this episode. That's not going to stop me from discussing the things, the places that I think that it falls short. But I did really like this episode. And in the way that I think that we have gone back and looked at a critical eye and reevaluated in a postmodern sense the original series. That is happening, I think, to TNG with those conversations like, just help them. Why are you flying away? Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know when it's going to be, because right now stock very high, but I can't wait for that conversation, that window to finally reach DS9, because I think there are a lot of things in DS9 that are a lot less progressive than we think they are. You know, as you were talking about the idea that it is a deconstruction, I do think that it is in a lot of ways, in a lot of episodes, a great deconstruction of this utopia that they've set up. But to be really fair, most of the show takes place outside of that utopia. You know, it takes place in just a general sci-fi sort of future. And the main setting for it is, you know, under a military commander. It is very concerned with the commerce of the station, you know, and whether or not Quark is doing capitalism correctly or incorrectly, and what the correct way to do it is. And I think it is a lot less, utopian and Federation than we think. And I don't even have like the vocabulary yet to totally to voice this, because like I said, the conversation hasn't reached it yet. All the Star Trek communists think that DS9 is the best because there's that one episode, but I can't wait till that wave reaches DS9 so we can start having important probing discussions about it. And I can like it even more in the same way that I like TOS and TNG more than I ever did.
I wanted to say, though, to the story construction, the Prime Directive element, and the idea that Michael Burnham would have saved it, is I don't think that's true necessarily, because part of it's almost a great adaptation of the story, in that like it doesn't get to the idea of like, wait, this is wrong or whatever, till like
there's no third act.
Yeah,
I'd say in Hollywood. Yeah,
in like I feel like, and I'm okay with this being a little different, but I feel like a traditional Star Trek episode would be like, they would find out that Act 2, and then that would be investigated, and then the idea of how do we interfere or do we not, Prime Directive, would be discussed. But instead, this reminds me more of a typical like Alex Kurtzman type thing, in that, or like a J.J. Abrams thing, where it keeps moving along. There's like little secrets that you don't really know along the way what's going on. Yeah. And what's this thing we found? What's this head wizard thing that's on the ground? Oh, we don't know, even though they're super sketchy about it. She's like, I don't know. But anyway,
and the script has to the script has to bend in a lot of directions to keep that secret in the J.J. Abrams fashion, because there are so many opportunities for them to go, all right, so what exactly happens here? You know, like Pike never asks enough questions. I started counting, like on one hand, the amount of scenes where somebody asks a question and then they're interrupted or the character just doesn't say anything.
Yes.
And the answer would have been, we plug a kid into an electric chair every few years.
Yeah. So that gets a little, it does push the limits. It gets a little silly. The idea, like you remember in Conscious of the King where Kirk's like kind of swooning that lady, but it's really like, because he's like, I'll help you. I'll take
Is your
you guys
dad Hitler? Yeah, right.
Yeah, he's like, it's like a plan. Here, like, Pike, you know, remember this lady 10 years ago? And like, she's just kind of gonna, she doesn't like take advantage of him, but
no,
like,
the relationship has no effect on the story at all.
It feels like, well, it does, because I feel like he like implicitly trusts her so much.
Yeah, he acts dumb because he knows her.
He does, yeah.
But
And
like,
it's
as
kinda
far
like,
as her like trying to tempt him into it, or it's floated, halfway through the episode in their kind of afterglow, it's floated that they may have the technology to save him, like when he gets his face melted and stuff like that. And so if that was held up as something for him to again reject, to like forward his sort of meta story. But it's not like he's never tempted. She makes a lame offer after he sees the corpse of one kid and the about to be corpse of another. She makes an offer that he could stay, and it's like, what are you talking about? Like there's no tension into that at all. He's out of there. Forget it. And then he just goes back and he just stares out the window. And I think that's like, I understand the emotion, but you are writers. You need to write something. Like, what does he say in his log? What does he say to Spock? Like, what happens other than, boy, that's a shame. We're backtracking, and so we have to connect to not only earlier works of literature, fiction, and art, but also earlier episodes of Star Trek. And two TNG episodes come up, both from the first season, that make me think about this situation. And one of them, they're both solved in the two ways that TNG at least solves Prime Directive stories. And one of those is the episode Justice, which we probably could have paired with this as well. A society that is functionally a utopia, but you get lethal injection for stepping on flowers. And it's a deal that they made with a god that's in orbit that they don't understand, and it is a criticism of religion, but it's also a criticism of absolutism in governance and jurisprudence. And the end of that, they break the Prime Directive. Picard just says, "No, you're not killing Wesley. We're leaving. This is not how we like to do business. But sorry, we're going." And the other episode is Symbiosis, the one where, like this episode, if they had just not interfered, everything would have turned out the way that it probably should have turned out. But they interfere in this horrible, parasitic relationship between these two planets. And Picard is resolved to not change anything because them's the rules. He probably got yelled at for justice. But he finds a clever Star Trek way to manipulate his non-interference in order to ultimately resolve the problem. It's that sort of like, we're smarter than you think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I don't think every Trek they need to like solve it,
No, I don't either. Absolutely
maybe,
not. That's the one thing that I like about this, even though I think it's very underwritten, is that they can't solve it. There's no solution.
I think there's been better, episodes where they just examine it a little bit more, where I feel like, you just don't really get that here. And like maybe even they try to do something and fail, or like they try and they can't,
Yeah.
I don't know. I was sort of thinking about that. Like there's this idea of like maybe they could, you could start a war or something, like just something to prevent you, or like to just spend any time talking about it, instead of just like the whole time they're kind of like, something's happening, but I'm not going to tell you. Like, even, and that's kind of interesting too, that they do, like, everyone in their society, they seem all happy when it's going on, but when they're interacting with outsiders, it's like they can tell that it's fucked up, or else they would just say it,
Yeah. Otherwise they would just say it. I was thinking about that. Like, are they embarrassed about having to like fry a kid? And if they I don't know, maybe they've run into other races who are like, hey, here's some brownies, we're your neighbors. Oh my God. And like, they're just used to people just being horrified by what they do. The question of the guilt and the society's culpability in what happens to the child is at the center of Omelas. Whereas these people, they sure hide it a lot, but they don't really seem all that embarrassed about it. And when the fulcrum point comes when it's this guy's, his own child, you know what I mean? Like, it's his child. Also, he is a connected, smart doctor who has the resources to sort of help orchestrate like his, you know, his own child's removal from the situation, or attempted removal. And I think that is more, that's less general and diffused than the theme of the original story, but it also blunts that theme because it becomes less of a question of what is each of our own role in society and how we contribute and how we collectively accept or dislike something. It just becomes like a father who's like, I just want my kid back. You know, obviously he's going to want his kid back. And then you have to make the society just these weird people who have like death guards with challenge coins and, you know, this weird ritual where they plug the kid in. She calls it, literally, she calls it sacrosanct, you know, so they're just all zealots. You know, she even, real near the end, they try to fix it a little bit. And she says, you know, when I met you, I felt the same way because you saved me from a shuttle crash when I was going somewhere to try to find some solution to our problem. I don't know if it's technology or they're going to negotiate with the aliens that run the machine. Like, they never really get into it because they don't really care. But it's that kind of like quick fast forward version of like a liberal getting older and turning into a conservative. Which is, you know, that does happen in the original story, but this is like a much like cheaper dime store version of it, I think. I
agree. And like you mentioned the dad, like I actually think it's kind of a cool idea that he's there, because he could have been your out, you know what I mean? He could have been like the third party where like they can't interfere, but like maybe, you know, you can stretch the rules and maybe this guy can get involved.
Yeah, sure.
Or just like the idea of like he was sort of bonding with Mabenga, but then like they don't do anything. It was sort of
yes, red alert, yellow alert, amber alert. We've got it. So there's literally in the episode a Federation regulation that allows them to like supersede non-interference, because anytime we shoot a ship down, we have to at least write a report, right? So their bureaucracy allows them to begin to unravel the mystery because they have to go to the ship. And it's so worrisome for what's her name that she goes with them, right, to make sure that they don't find anything. So, you know, they could have a situation where we've got a father and his kid's lost, and so amber alert, burp, and then that means that like regulations say we have to track down this kid and make sure he's safe wherever he is. So you're right. They could have found a Picard way out of it, like a way to sort of massage the bureaucracy.
Or even like it could be a thing like, it could be like Tosk, where O'Brien goes against the rules to help Tosk. This could be like Mabenga because he relates to the father, you know, like maybe he slips him a little something that'll short circuit the electric chair and like blow it up or something, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, or they put because there's this device that's the neural inhibitor or whatever that's supposed to like,
looks like a head wizard.
Right, like somehow he internalizes that, or like here's a scene. Now we're just rewriting it, but we do that every week. He puts the kid in the computer and takes his daughter out, and so they rush to sickbay. Like, we got to find this kid, and they pull the covers back, but it's her. And she's like, I want a glass of milk. Like, where is this kid? You know, but he's in the transporter.
Yeah, so something like, I don't want to say like my idea is better, but it was just more of like...
It probably is, though.
Some of the characters, you know, you could have used more from.
Yeah, but I mean, like, one of the problems with this is that... And before I sort of slightly took LeGuin to task for her story not being having modern sophistication, Now she gets a plus because it doesn't have to answer a lot of questions because it's short and not, modernly sophisticated. But this episode, in updating the idea, isn't really about anything. Like, I don't know what it's about. They're just a horrible planet that's not in the Federation, and no goddamn wonder that they're not in the Federation. And Pike doesn't have anything to say other than what we obviously know is wrong, and he doesn't have a solution. And so it doesn't really update it. It's just a lot longer. And that's kind of my problem ultimately with it. I mentioned before that Ursula Le Guin was influential to Star Trek. She really has been. Like, her, Hainish cycle is, the Hainish, it's called like the League of All Worlds is their sort of federation. It's not really like a Star Trek federation, but it is sort of a socially positive, group for the most part that controls or is present on all these planets, in our galaxy. The TNG episode, The Outcast, is very similar to elements of The Left Hand of Darkness, which is a novel that is set and takes place on a world with a race of completely ambiguous gender.
Oh, and well, we should do that.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe we'll upgrade to full book for her. Yeah, but part of the problem is that like the people that go to like deal with them just cannot get past this whole thing, like that there aren't no guys or girls. They're just like who they are. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of a big thing in TNG. I don't know if there's a thing where one person decides, no, I am a pretty girl. And then the world is like, no, you're not. Get back here. But right. Star Trek tends to do that, I think. And I think it's done that in this case. This is absolutely explicitly a reference to the story that we've been talking about. But it surprised me to learn that the third season of Star Trek Discovery was cited by showrunner and executive producer Alex Kurtzman as being inspired by this short story. The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas.
The season of Discovery?
Yes. If you'll remember, in the third season of Star Trek Discovery,
is that the
they
burn?
Are trying to figure. Yes, they're trying to figure out what caused the burn, and the central dilemma was caused by a child, and that's his inspiration.
That's
and I can read you,
stupid.
I read an interview with him. It doesn't clear anything up at all. It's literally just him tap dancing and going, I like that story, and it's got a child, and so we thought, what if there was a child?
So shallow, because
he's a hack.
This episode is an actual good.
He's a wonderful husband and father. He's a complete hack.
Yeah. So, this guy.
but Gooey, we're not done.
Well,
God, we're not done.
Because this episode, for all the complaining we've done, it does sort of make the same. I don't think it knows it's doing it, but it makes kind of the same point ish of the story. Is that like, look at this good society. They're actually kind of weird, but they're also fucked up,
Yeah, right.
Gets that across fine. We've
already talked about how the episode completely misses the story's point and theme about how like we all have like a responsibility to this. It's not just a world full of weirdos who are going to have a color party and then they're going to set a kid on fire. Like, people are confronted with this. They have to think about this, and what do they think about that? So like I said, we're not done. So I'm also preparing for a David Bowie, the films of David Bowie panel for this con that I'm going to do. So I'm watching all David Bowie's movies.
You're all over.
I know. That's all. As soon as we're done talking, I have to watch another 6 hours of stuff just today. And so I just watched for the umpteenth time, The Man Who Fell to Earth, the Nick Rogue movie from 1976 starring David Bowie. And of course, Alex Kurtzman and his writing partner, Jenny Lumet, have just done I think it's a 12-episode miniseries or show, I guess, on Paramount Plus, which is itself described as both a reboot and an update. So it is technically, I think, I haven't watched it. I don't think I'm going to, but it is technically a sequel. I think the events of the film did happen, but it is also very redolent of the events of the film. And the whole point of that film is that American society will completely destroy you no matter who you are. You're this nice alien who just wants some water, and you will be completely dissolute thanks to our TV and our booze and our culture and guns. And it's very on the nose. It's by a British guy. I always feel like UK people, want to criticize America through art, and I'm not sure they always get it right. But anyway, that's the point, right? Alex Kurtzman's show is about an alien who comes here, and at an important time, at a turning point of history, he has to strive to save 2 worlds through his efforts. It's just like, it is not an inspiring story. That's not the point. You have just drawn this out for 12 episodes. I was looking at the episode titles. They're all David Bowie songs, which really made me mad and depressed. But then, of course, I realized that the last thing that Bowie did before he died was a West End musical called Black Star, which was connected to his album Black Star. That is basically a jukebox musical that is an adaptation of the William Tevis novel and film that he was in, The Man Who Fell to Earth.
So he already did it.
Bowie's last act was being a hack, but also you just know
he's
that
allowed
you
to
just
do it.
Well, it's his stuff, I guess. But you just know that Alex Kurtzman saw the Black Star on the West End and went, I could make a show out of that. And so they're just going to do that.
Oh,
and so the reason I bring all this up,
he said that's a good idea,
is because he completely misunderstood that story. The writers of this episode, there's 2 of them. This is their first Star Trek credit, the both of them. One of them has written Cartoon Network shows and nothing else. The other has written nothing else. I want you to guess who are associate producers on the Paramount Plus series, The Man Who Fell to Earth. The 2 writers of this episode.
Oh.
Which means that I don't know exactly what the inspiration was, but basically this is just another bite of the ice cream bar to do this again. Probably through, their boss on this other show's like, why don't you do that? And they just took another dip and just once again just misunderstood this story.
That's great. This story can just keep providing.
This is what we're doing, Gooey. Every time we have to talk about new Trek, we have to complain about something. But I don't think that it's Trek's fault so much as Trek has always been a commodity. I got a million action figures that'll tell you that. But I feel like even the production of the show is at this point so much of a commodity, it is impossible to divorce
the production.
From all these banal aspects of this corporate production of something.
Well, that's when you say the production, it immediately makes me think of when you fire up any one of these shows, it's like minutes of producer credits.
Oh yeah, there's 47 producers on every single episode.
And it's like, oh, this is like, because you think of when you watch. This is just the credits that I'm harping on, so it's dumb. It doesn't actually matter. But,
well,
you're seeing Deep Space Nine. They're zooming around it. It's magical. And you're seeing, Cirroc Lofton or whatever, and yes. Michael Dorn, and you're like, these are, oh man, I love these guys. These are the freaking stars of the show. And then now you're watching Picard's going by, and it's like a producer parade, and you're like,
yeah,
what is this?
I know, it far outstrips the talent and the writer and the director and everybody else. I know, that's just how shows get made now. Like everybody, I think writes with, the understanding that they will receive a producer credit, on season 2 or something like that. And then also if you're just part of this Star Trek, Secret Hideout family, then, you're going to get the chance to run a show or be a associate producer or co-producer on another show after this. So
it feels like it's made by committee. And
to be fair, this is exactly how Berman Trek was made. It's how the TOS was made. There was the Beamler, Bear, Moore Mafia, in DS9.
Well,
unfortunately, the difference is that those were all like good writers who struggled to get where they are, not people who are coming out of writing school and are getting a job and then ending up running their own show. And maybe they wrote a couple episodes of, Enterprise back in the day.
I think it's not even that, like, there was never, like, stuff made bad, or, like, I think about when people complain about, like, certain movies now looking like cheap garbage. It's not that there haven't always been cheap garbage movies, but, like, you at least felt like there was some effort and, like, craft put into them at some points, Whereas, like, with these, like, the stories are, like, it just sounds like they go and they're like, people like, they're like, you like Khan? All right, you like Khan. That's what you said. Okay,
hey,
well, let's get that in there. It feels like they're
Khan
just
on this folder. Yeah,
like if enough people ask questions about it at mission log convention or whatever, Mission Chicago.
Keep your eyes peeled. Maybe we could see Khan in the future. Who knows? Yeah, I don't want to harp on this all day, obviously, but I do think we're talking about production, and I think that part of it was that Star Trek was a pretty low to the ground production back in the day. They were successful, but they were basically doing it on their own through syndication, and so. Money was this much and no more. And I think that there is a lot more money to throw at things now. And I think that interferes in the way that something is made. And I think you could still say, because, I watch other streaming shows that are probably low budget and incredibly well made. Like, I can't believe that, I always call it Breaking Saul, but it's not. It's Better Call Saul,
Yeah.
a show that is a kind of almost a joke premise spinoff of Breaking Bad, is still on and has become, in my mind, as good, if not better in some ways, than Breaking Bad. And that's just a bunch of people talking in chicken restaurants and driving around Albuquerque. And I bet that they spin those things out really fast. You have to. But they know their characters, there's an attention to detail, and they know what they want it to be about. And I just wish that they could apply that to Star Trek again, or going forward for a couple different series. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. Let's talk about the kid. The kid is good, but this is another mistake in my opinion, and it has nothing to do with Star Trek. It was a mistake to make the kid a genius. I think that it's Star Trek. You want to feel the loss of this kid, and so you make him a cute little genius who can play with your sick daughter, have fun. He can reprogram a biobed. Spock's like, this kid's pretty good. That's a mistake. Because it isn't about whether or not the kid is a genius or not, and then we're going to set him on fire. It should be horrible no matter what. And specifically,
the story, you think?
Yes, specifically LeGuin makes this like a mentally, deficient child, a pathetic being. And the point is it doesn't matter who the person is. In fact, it's worse because a society like this could make that kid's life as good as it could be. It could make that kid's life wonderful.
That's what would make
Star Trek,
having the father there sort of even better, because it's you see someone who is gonna love it, despite that.
Absolutely, despite whatever's going on with it. Yeah, but this is like a super kid who's like Wolverine and can heal from anything, and it's just Star Trek. I don't know if old Star Trek would have done this either, but I think it's like the blinders of Star Trek and their utopia that clearly this kid has to be amazing. Like, he could be a character on the show. He's so awesome. Isn't it terrible what's happening to this awesome kid? It's like, no, it's terrible what would happen to any kid.
Yeah.
I think it's missing the point.
Yes, and that, I mean, that makes me think of when you see that Twitter that's what do you call it? Occupy Democrats.
Oh my God.
And they they share a story that's something just horrible, but it happens to a conservative something, but it's something awful. It's so and so was just tortured by a bear, but it's just some Midwestern mom who has a
Trump flag on her truck.
Let's go Brandon thing, and they're they were just torn limb to limb. Retweet if you think this is awesome.
Oh boy.
That's sort of, I think, also part of the somewhat of the liberal world order mindset of if it happens to someone who's bad, fuck them a little bit. And I mean, I sort of get that sometimes with certain things, but in some cases, this is bad no matter who it happens to,
Yeah, the wonder of this society and the fact that they have all this amazing technology that confounds, the crew of the Enterprise. They should be more prepared than any society to solve this problem, to take care of something. Obviously, no amount of technological advancement makes you immune to societal ills, but it's even more tragic because they can't resolve this problem, or that they have turned their back on the problem. That is the tragedy of both the story and the episode. Real weird question for you real quick, and then maybe we'll get to our technological exchange. What's up with kids in Strange New Worlds?
Right, I heard you say that on your show.
Yeah, and Ella no sold it like she always does. But I'm gonna get you to interface with me on this.
Well, I was thinking about it because when I heard you say it, I was like, oh yeah, I guess there have been, but like I felt sort of similar to her in that it didn't like really stick out to me. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It didn't really bug me.
Let me break it down for you and for the listeners. Children appear in 6 out of 10 episodes of this first season. Now, I'm cheating a little when I bring up Children of the Comet. Not really kids, I guess.
Okay, doesn't count.
But Ghosts of Illyria, of course, introduces Dr. Mbenga's daughter. Memento Mori features a flashback to young Nan's experiences. Of course, you've got Lift Us Up, the episode we're talking about. The Elysian Kingdom episode is all about, the daughter's experiences on the Enterprise. And All Those Who Wander is the let's fight the Borg, it's aliens and James Cameron, but has a kid who, people have pointed out is kind of a Newt-like figure, but is there, for a reason. Like, what's up with putting kids there?
And there's the kid that he is writing the letter to in the last episode, where he's like, "Don't join Starfleet" or whatever. I would say the one with Mbenga's daughter, you kind of combine because it's sort of one episode that they like took a little extra time to tell.
Some of I suppose. Well, that's their fault for constructing such a weird episode.
She's sort of like the Wesley Crusher of the show.
Wesley aside, general logic is, I'm watching TNG. Oh, that's a kid episode. Oh, what else is on? To the point where they don't really put kids in Star Trek until we get to Naomi Wildman and the Borg kids in Voyager. And the episode is never fully about them unless it's a fodder episode, in which case, what else is going on? But Naomi Wildman kicks ass. Like, she's a cool character and a good actress playing her. So other than that, like, I wonder, like, why? Like, is it... And I haven't really gone through... I guess we could do it really quick now, but it's okay. It's mostly kids in danger, except for, I guess, Elysian Kingdom. So is it like a cheap device to get you worried because you're putting a kid in danger? Is it the kind of the fanciful world of the Elysian Kingdom, or the idea of seeing the world through kids' eyes, and a suggestion of innocence? Like, why are there, in 5 out of 10 episodes, kids in these things?
It's probably a little bit of, like, it's a cheap pop, cheap heat, but it's partially, too, I think, sort of, because I think that is one of the main things, I think, on Pike's mind, the idea of, like, I'm going to save these young officers, and now they're kids. And so I think it's kind of also just sort of one of the themes of the show for the first season is, like, protecting kids, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, weird.
I think it's more probably just that's coincidentally what they thought of, and then, like, because
but, like, you have, like, many pitches, dozens of pitches, right? And then you pick your 10 episodes. Don't you, like, have some reserve ones and you go, wait a minute, do we want to do like 3 kid episodes in a row? Maybe we'll just like slip this one in here instead.
Yeah, that's true. I think too, it's just like, it doesn't help that it was like a short amount of episodes, like you probably wouldn't have seen that weird if there was other things. I was watching
Not a lot of kids on Discovery.
They like introduced Kirk's brother, he's on the ship, and I was like, they should have done just an episode about him.
Yeah, instead of just like, oh, Mr. Kirk. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's what I was thinking is like,
look,
this is more of my criticism of the season, but like every character could have used like maybe a few more eps, especially the ones who we're not going to see anymore,
Yeah.
So
it's not a perfect series.
No, it's all right.
But it's perfect for old people like me because I know how to watch it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I was actually thinking that too, like
the fact that Discovery is the same thing every week. They go to Admiral Salt and Pepper gives them a job, and they say, "Don't do it the way you always do it, Michael Burnham." And then Michael Burnham goes back to the ship and goes, "I have to do this the way I always do it." And people go, "I'm there for you, and we're going to eat cake." And then they like fly around. She does what she always does. They go, "Good job, but we're mad." And then there's a little suggestion to something that's been happening in the background. And that happens 15 times a year. That criticizing that is invalid. It is criticism proof. That is what people want. That is what people expect. That is what TV is right now. But when I see that, I'm just like, I don't understand why we're here. I don't know why any of this is happening.
Yeah, I feel like I'm lost.
I don't feel
at
like
sea,
they should.
watching Discovery.
Or Lost in Space. I don't. Speaking of Lost in Space, that's one of the problems with Lost in Space. The reboot is like it just goes on, and the episodes are like, when do they stop? I don't think every show should be like this for me, but I do like the fact that I can watch this show, I can interface with it for an hour, and then much like TNG or even DS9 or definitely Voyager before it, there's going to be ones that I like, and there's going to be ones that I go, so there'll be another one next week, you know?
I think
just
it makes the
more.
discussion more fun, like, of talking about this particular episode, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not like, what's the burn? Is it a sad boy?
Yeah. I love conceptualizing this episode as a Discovery episode, though. I'm going to make a Twitter account that's like Strange New Discovery, and it's just like Strange New Worlds plots fed into the Discovery machine, and like the moments from okay, I got to cut this out. This is a good idea. I got to do this.
Oh, you should definitely do it. I still think it's funny we were speculating on like, oh, what's the metaphor for the burn? Is this about like America or something? But instead it's like about being lonely.
No, it's a little kid.
It's like about being a sad boy.
It's about being sad. Well, something that makes Trek is the technology of the future. It sometimes facilitates what the characters are doing. Just as often, it's the complication that they're dealing with. And as far as the ones who walk away from Omelas go, imagine whatever technology you want.
Yes.
But we are going to add a specific technology to it because we roll randomly on a list of Star Trek technologies. And we add what we get to the non-Trek media, we subtract it from the Trek episode, our technological exchange. Here's the list of technologies that we work from. It's phasers, holodecks, tricorders, transporters, warp drives, replicators, communicators, shields, advanced medical technology, and androids. And if I roll on my random number selecting device, the number that I get is number 9, advanced medical technology. If it existed in this world, the world of Omelas, how would their world be different?
I was thinking this is either a very possible task or an impossible task of trying to put the technology in. Because
I think, because of the vagueness of the
it's like
of the setting.
Well,
yeah,
suggesting anything could be there, the author I feel like would be like, yeah, they got that.
so my response to that would be focus on the one thing that we do know, which is there is a small, squalid room in the basement of this building somewhere where a child is being held captive and sitting in his own shit. So I think that part of his torture, a part of his ordeal, would involve whatever advanced medical technology can give you. You know, I think that he would be exquisitely tortured instead of just neglected.
Oh, you think it'd make it worse?
Yeah, I think it would be, flayings and things, injury unto death and yet being kept alive.
What's stopping him now from torturing him,
Because the metaphor, well, no, you're absolutely right. Because the metaphor is exclusion, right? And it isn't about cruelty so much as neglect in the story. I think I can't remember, there's a passage about how like the keepers get mad at the kid and kick them, but it's because that they don't want to interface. They want to cut themselves off from this person completely because they can't handle the guilt.
Don't treat it like a human.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And I think that has to be present in our new version still, but I'm just imagining that, you can make a real bad time for this little kid. And knowing that too, it just does. That happens a little bit in the episode because you see, like, they do have all this crazy technology, and it's like we fry this kid still.
Put him in the thing. Also, we don't have this kind of detail, so we've got to sort of create it for ourselves. But there's a child. We don't know. This child isn't immortal, I'm guessing. So this child will die from neglect eventually, and then we'll have to have something akin to a yub-yub ceremony like they have in the episode where you plug another kid in. But if you have advanced medical technology, maybe you can keep this kid alive forever. Maybe this is like, the Emperor in Warhammer on the Golden Throne suffering. And if so, having a kid be there for longer than you've been alive, does that abstract more the idea of who this kid is? We've barely talked at all about religious themes and the fact that one person is suffering for all these sins. And if Jesus is a guy that you know and he's on the news and he's walking around and then he's brutally, crucified on TV, that's a lot different than you hearing about that there was a man, long ago who did this. Does it change how people feel about the kid and the guilt that they might feel?
Like, yeah, because I could see that too if it's like, well, especially if you have the advanced medical technology, it's sort of like, it could almost be even worse if, like they don't even really eat. They're just, you can keep them alive. Like they don't,
Right.
they just don't do anything but
Yeah.
feel. I guess that's kind of how it already is. But like, there's something about like the idea of like it being, non-moving and like almost sterile to the point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the story presents it as like a kid wallowing around in a basement, but what if it was just like the kid in the episode, but it's like you're permanently in this electric chair or whatever, but you never die and you just feel that pain forever. I don't know, there's something horrific about that.
Yeah, but that's another way that the episode ruins the story, because the neglect is the point, right? The isolation is the point. The ostracization is the point. And look, I feel bad for this fictional kid in the episode, but he gets plugged into the thing. We don't get a sense of whether he's conscious or if he feels the pain. Do you know what I mean? So like, maybe, if you're describing like a Johnny Get Your Gun, Metallica's One situation where this kid is just locked inside of his own body, but yet being kept alive forever. I mean, I think that fulfills the contract. I think that's okay.
Well, one thing you made me think of earlier, I forgot to say it, is like, because you said like, why is it got to be like this? And it also made me think of too, like a benefit of like it being Star Trek is you could have almost had it be like, I know they want you to like empathize, but like maybe it could have been like, like in Devil in the Dark, where it's like we empathize with this creature that we think is also like hideous, like you could have done something like that. Like the kid itself could be a different species or something like that, but still like, you know what I mean? Like maybe pull some of the Star Trek card and like make it a little weird, but like you realize that it's like, this is just like you or I too.
My only thing with that is that is like pretty well trodden ground, like I guess it would have to be a Horta situation, because it would have to be something that is sort of naturally unrecognizable as humans to us as well. I think about, well, let that be your last battlefield, like the white on one side, black on the other. I'm actually using this not comedically. This is a real discussion about that episode right now, where it's so ridiculous to us. It's like, look, you've just got grease paint on that side and the other side, and then that guy's like that. Like, what is the difference? From a distance, there is no difference. Or the episode, what's it called? Congenitor on Enterprise, where there's the advanced race that has like the slave race that, they don't treat like human beings and raises their kids or whatever. And Tucker's just like, well, this is just like you guys, I'm going to teach you to read and I'm going to do all this stuff. And then eventually he ends up like really fucking up like their relationship with this society, and also the congenitor kills himself. But so yeah, it would have to be something where we don't even see it. But then again, like, that's Devil in the Dark. I don't think it's a bad idea.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it is kind of well-trod territory, but so is, apparently the story they're doing.
Yeah, it is kind of what they're doing.
Well, they've tried to do it. Maybe it's not been done well multiple times.
Well, they tried this time, that's for sure. Should we move?
All right.
Yeah.
I still think there's some point in there about like, look at this great society, and like, they think they have it, or like they celebrate. They do this awful thing to people, but they find like a way to justify it in their own minds. You know what I mean? And that makes me think of like, so much of like suffering we kind of valorize, like, for example, like black suffering and stuff like that. That's kind of what that made me think of like, yeah, we'll you know, have all these videos that you see all the time of, like, you know, police just like brutally killing black people, but some people feel okay about it because they can just be like, they think that suffering's like honorable or whatever. You know, you saw people talk about George Floyd that way. You know what I mean? Like that he was a hero or whatever. And it's like, no, he was just like a guy. That you had to make him into a hero to like feel good about that.
Yeah, I guess you'd have to wonder about the marketability of no suffering. Do you know what I mean? Like getting what you want, right? Like, I think everybody who marches against police brutality, who marches for civil rights, wants a world where you don't need to march for civil rights. But who knows that maybe this is a problem that we have encountered several times, where things get so bad that it becomes clear that a change is necessary. And so there's a little bit of change, and then most of the people don't see the problem still. And then only once in a while it flares up, you know, with something like, I mean, police have been killing people of color all over the country up until George Floyd dying on camera. Mm-hmm. And so, maybe there's like, it comes in waves in terms of like people's inability to continue to live while the child suffers, you know, in the basement. But they're still, even when they're not seeing it, that kid is still there.
Yeah. You
know,
true.
Yeah. All right, let's we covered it. Let's move on to the other side of our technological exchange. If in the episode "Lift Us Where Suffering Cannot Reach," there is no advanced medical technology, what do we got? And again, once we're dealing with another race here, so are we applying this merely to the Federation? Aliens are not included, or is this this is a galaxy without advanced medical technology?
Well, according to the Omelans, I don't know what they are in this, but the Enterprise does not have advanced medical technology.
That's true.
Aha! So we found a loophole.
Could they even say that? Yeah. I'm comfortable just having it be the Federation.
What if the people in this... What if, I just trying to think how to make this work, but what if they had a vague technology and the episode was like, don't worry about what they have.
Yeah, right.
I don't know how like Pike's doing his log and he's like, imagine, they have trains, sure, whatever you say.
They had some stuff, all right? Let me tell you, there was some stuff down there.
The details aren't important. You're talking about this genius kid.
Is Mabenga aboard, or does he just not have a role in the story?
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like he could be more useful if he had, maybe, you know, maybe he could do something else with it. Like, since they're maybe on the same, maybe it's they who don't have the advanced technological footing. Maybe they're like equal, but Mabenga, maybe it's like something they like, a disease they give the kid or something, and or like, you know, he develops a way, the way they kill the kid, he could like actually understand how it works. You know, maybe that could be how they figure it out. You know, he takes a look at one of those head things and he's like, what's going on? I think they do that a little bit, right? Maybe they don't.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe you could do more with that, like, because that's kind of what I'm okay with a Trek episode that's like kind of a ride, but it would be nice if there was like, there's a few episodes in Strange New Worlds, I think the second one does it too, where it feels sort of like stuff just happening to them, and they're not really like, I think of Star Trek a lot of times as like sort of a mystery show, and they're like, and they're the detectives, you know, it's like watching CSI in space. This
episode's kind of like that too, because they don't ever really do anything.
Yeah,
and I think I feel like maybe at the last minute they might have realized that, or just had, you know, because there's a C plot where Uhura is looking at the tapes or whatever, and all she figures out is that the colony is connected to them. And I think, like, when you were watching this, did you have any doubt in your mind that nearby colony wasn't connected to them in some way? Like, it doesn't produce any actionable information.
Well, that's why that should have been second act, because then you're like, okay,
Yeah.
that happens a lot when I'm watching a Trek
'Cause she-
episode where I go,
Yeah,
this is obviously what's going on. But then they're like,
Yeah, yeah.
no,
Oh, yeah.
obviously, yeah.
The lady confesses immediately that they're who they are. If she just says, I don't know who those guys are, and then that's a second act reveal, and then it leads to the scene where they very lightly grill, barely even a sear, the guy in Pike's room, and before the guy can really spill the beans on what the whole deal is, he gets called out of the room, and so there's and then even up to the end where they're having the Yub Yub celebration, and Pike's like, so what's the deal with this whole thing? What's going on?
Then at least he seems like he knows something's going on.
Yeah, fifth act, he's asking questions. Yeah, and then on the ship, like Spock we see off screen that the guy finally confesses to number one what the deal is, and she goes to Spock to try to call Pike, and they can't call because there's a field blocking everything. But even if they called, what would the difference be? It wouldn't, because he knows in 2 seconds anyway when they pull a dead kid out of there, like he immediately knows. So it doesn't change anything. They don't have any agency. It's just like they go to somebody else's show. They go to the Enterprise flies into an Outer Limits episode for a week.
Yeah, exactly. There's plenty of episodes that aren't even strange, like classic Trek stuff where that happens sometimes too. It's fine. Yeah. Like, because they do, I think sometimes they're just like really focused on, well, we want to tell this part of the story, and they just don't think as much about the actual crew, Yeah.
So
they really were concerned about the challenge coin guy, the dad, you know what I mean?
Yeah. The challenge coin. Yeah. Which, by the way, whatever.
That's pretty cool.
The challenge coins guy is so dumb because it's like, so apparently he's part of this movement or whatever. Did she know, was she using Pike? If she had used, because it seems like I don't know, if she had used Pike, and like the Enterprise can't strong arm them because they have lower technology than them, right? So he's there, and it seems like she's kind of using Pike to push this guy out and to flush him out, but not really. And then Pike pulls a phaser on the guy and says, it's not set on stun. Why not? Stun the guy. Right. He wakes up in a hospital bed. You go, all right, tell us everything, right? Like, but he doesn't do that. Then he takes her hostage. He happens to fall on his knife. How could she plan all that? It totally falls apart. And I don't want to dislike this episode. Let's stop talking about it and just say
it's a good episode.
they'd be even more confused than they already were if they didn't have advanced medical technology.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
All right. Well, I think that we have given everybody everything that they need to be satisfied in this particular episode. So let's talk about what's going to happen on our next episode.
Our next episode, we're talking about the TOS episode, Requiem for Methuselah.
Yeah, it's a classic.
Oh, yeah. A legendary ep. Good to get to a classic. And we're going to be comparing it to The Man from Earth, which I've never seen. So I'm pretty excited about that.
I have never seen it either. I think a lot of people haven't seen it, but it is significant because it was written by Jerome Bixby, who wrote that episode of Star Trek. He also wrote Mirror, Mirror, Day of the Dove, and By Any Other Name. And also the classic Twilight Zone episode, It's a Good Life.
Wow.
And so this is not a well-known movie. It's kind of a lower budget movie, and we'll talk about that next time. But it has a similar premise, and it's also significant to us and to Star Trek fans because it stars people who have been in a lot of Star Trek stuff. It stars Tony Todd, John Billingsley, Richard Riehle, who's been on Star Trek a couple times, and this. I've got some news for you. I know you've got a lot of time in your hands, so I know you're going to get down with this. But they actually this came out in 2007. They made a sequel to this in 2017 that stars Michael Dorn.
What? Okay, let's go.
And also Vanessa Williams as well, another Star Trek guest star, and was written by Emerson Bixby, who, without researching, I'm going to assume is the son of Jerome Bixby. So maybe we'll talk about The Man from Earth, and maybe a little discussion as well about The Man from Earth Holocene.
I'm down. I'll watch both for sure.
Yeah. So I'm definitely looking forward to that, and also really enjoyed our conversation today. But that is it for this week's Backtracking, and thanks for listening, listeners. And if you've enjoyed our conversation and like the show, tell a friend. And you can follow us at @Backtracking on Twitter, and tell us, too, what you think that we should look at in future episodes. Gooey, tell the people where they can find you online.
You can find me on Twitter. I'm at GooeyFame.
And I'm at K1IBAN on Twitter. And you can find all of the programs on the Just Enough Trope Network at Just Enough Trope on Twitter. I think there will be one more episode of Backtracking before I appear at Convergence Con in the Twin Cities. But if you'll be in the Twin Cities, I suggest that you go to Convergence Con. And also I'll have interviews and some Star Trek stuff, Star Trek related material to report back on when after I go to that con. So updates on that to come. And that's it for us for this week, but we'll see you soon. And until then, keep on trekking.